Discovery, go at throttle up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Front Row Chaos. I'm your host, Travis Smith, and I am ecstatic again to have another great episode in tap for you. It is football season, so I have my cousin here, Paul Rolls, and we're going to talk a lot about football back in the day when we grew up, and we're going to proceed all the way through what we see now, and then we'll go ahead and maybe end with some NFL stuff that we can talk about. But I want to introduce my guest. Paul Rolls is here. Thank you, Paul, for coming by.
Thanks, Trav. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you here for the next hour or so.
Well, I have to admit to you that out of all of the shows that I've done, yours is number one.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about.
So we are, I'm ecstatic to have him back because, and that is no joke, out of all the shows I did, the one we did on the umpires and Little League and stuff, really, for some reason, hit home. So I'm hoping this one does the same, if not better than the last one. So I'm really happy that you're here. But we're going to start off with football, and we both, I would say, love it, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I mean, we grew up with it, and you know, when we grew up in the 80s, if you don't know this, but we grew up in the late 70s, but basically in the 80s is when we really did a lot of our growing up. But we had great teachers to kind of guide us to that competitive level.
We did. You know, in grammar school, we had Bill Bynum and Tim Hillis.
Yeah.
And they were instrumental in getting us going in athletics.
Yeah, I remember when we hit the 6th grade mark, that's when we got Mr. Bynum.
Right.
And before that, we the way the school is set up in Biggs, we used to play out in the front, and now it's a big parking lot, but that's where the playground was. And we would go out there, and kickball, I think, was probably the biggest game we used to play.
That was a big one.
Yeah, and we would, you know, I remember, like I was telling Paul before the show started, kickball, get on the line. You know, we get on the line, and then you'd choose, right? You have two captains. And they would choose, you know, I'd take you, you take him, I take you, take her, that kind of thing. And we would play that game, and if you could kick it hard enough and get it on the roof of the elementary school,
the home run.
It was a home run. So we started off, you know, playing that game, and then we got into Mr. Bynum's class, and we started flag football.
Right.
And we started flag football, and I believe we played all our games in Orville.
Yeah, I think we had a few games in Biggs.
Did we have a few games? Okay. So we played flag football with Mr. Bynum, and, you know, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, we didn't lose.
Oh, that's too long ago. I can't remember.
I don't think we did, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm serious. I mean, I think I'm pretty sure I remember us at Rico's in Orville.
Oh, pizza place, yes.
Went one, and we were having a pizza party at that time. So I remember that, and so we go from Mr. Bynum's class, and then Mr. Hillis, Paul, you said he was in there too.
Hillis was a 5th grade teacher. So we started sports with, you know, 5th grade. I remember playing basketball and you know, football at the grammar school level with those guys.
I think I don't remember it because I was exiled to Ridgevale because of my behavior.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. That was a good choice probably by your parent.
I swear, I felt like, you know, I had to go there because I was in Mrs. Clark's class, and we just didn't get along, and they sent me to Ridgevale with Ryan Curtis.
Troublemakers.
In fact, when I was in Ridgevale, I remember they called me into the office, and they said, "Hey, do you know anything about putting whiskey or toothpicks in whiskey?" And I said, "I don't know a thing about it."
Nothing.
And they said,
Steve
"Well,"
Thompson.
I said, "Well, we found a like a medicine bottle with toothpicks in it, soaking in whiskey, by the big redwood tree by the office." And I said, "Boy, that's too bad."
Yeah, I wish I found that.
And I knew. And they said, "Well," they said you were in on it. And I said, "How can I be? I'm here."
I'm in Richville.
I'm in Richville, baby. I've been sent to Alcatraz, right? So I went to Ridgevale for that 5th grade year, so maybe that's why I missed some of what you're talking about. I just really remember Bynum's class. In fact, I remember doing push-ups and sit-ups in Mr. Bynum's class. And, back then I could do them real good. Now I wouldn't say I'm pretty good at them. But then I did. And I remember going out to the Little League field that we used to have back there and playing back there. And I think we'd set up our football field back there.
Yeah, I think so too.
And had some practices and stuff. But we started off really good. We had a class, I think you can agree, that there was nobody that really stood out. It was just we were all really good.
Not a real star, just some good athletes and played well together.
It just had a gelling. And I think, and Paul could probably say this too, but I think the reason we gelled so well is because as we were growing up, we had games besides at school all the time.
Oh, yeah, we played a lot of blacktop ball.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what it was, baseball, football, basketball.
Yeah, I mean, we had games. I remember at my house in the preacher's yard next to me, they had a little pretty good yard for wiffle ball, basketball, stuff like that. We really kind of were used to each other by the time we got into grade school.
Yeah.
So it was really a natural flow for us to get to that level. So we go to Mr. Bynum's, and I'm pretty sure, and maybe he can comment and say whether that's true or not, I believe we won it all. And I think our biggest school that we played was Wilcox.
Helen Wilcox? Yeah.
Helen Wilcox. That seemed like, and they always had giant guys with facial hair and freaking armpit hair. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So we played Helen Wilcox, I think, a few times. And like I said, we were good. And so we got into, I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but I remember the first day in junior high. And when we went to junior high, you actually went to the high school campus.
Right.
You did.
Yep.
You weren't on the grammar school campus anymore. So as you were a sixth grader, where we were, once you ended that sixth grade year, you went to the high school campus. And so now you're at 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, all the way to 12th up there. And I remember, and I don't know if it was the first day of PE, but it was somewhere in that first week that we had callback for a PE teacher. And I remember he sat us down and he said, you guys have a real potential to do really well in sports.
I remember that talk, and then he told us what it was going to take to build a great team.
That's right.
And, teamwork was a big one. Strength and conditioning was a big one. Callback was big in the weight room, which I really think helped us out quite a bit.
Yeah. And I just remember that. And it's like, this guy doesn't know us from Adam, really. I mean, he's seen us play a little bit, I guess.
He knew a few of us. There was 7 or 8 of us that played Pop Warner football down down
Pop
in
Warner.
And he actually would drive us down to the Gridley weight room.
Well, that's what I was. I remember that specifically when we got into that 7th grade year. I remember hanging out at Mike Shadd's house because Mike Shadd just moved up here.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a trailer on, I can't remember, it's 3rd Street, I think. Yeah. And we would hang out there and wait for callback to come pick us up because our weight room was being cleaned or something.
Well,
I can't remember.
Callback was a Butte College teacher at that time, and he taught that weight room class.
Oh, gotcha.
And Gridley's weight room was a lot bigger.
Gotcha.
And it got him the opportunity to sign us up and kind of get away from some of the CIF rules about talking to people in the 7th and 8th grade. So he got a madness.
There was rules back then?
He had a madness about that, but that's the way I think he got around it, which
I see.
All in all helped us out.
And see, that's something I didn't know. I remember just going down to Gridley in his station wagon, and then, when we would lift weights, right, he had us a program.
Yep.
So we would go in and we would max out on whatever lift it was, and then he would somehow formulate, okay, you need to be repping this much weight
for this week. And then your weight's going to go up the next week.
That's right. And I remember being in school when we really had that teaching, because we would go into class, and I mean, we would dress down, get on the line, and immediately go into the weight room if that's what we were doing that day.
Yep.
And it was like, okay, and he would group us up into groups of guys that were kind of all the same.
Similar strengths.
Similar strengths, yep. Right? So we would go to the bench, let's say with 3 or 4 guys, and we would do our bench, and then we would move to the power clean and do that. And it was like every 15 minutes, I think he was blowing the whistle and making us rotate. And so we would get a full workout in like 45 minutes. And we had, our weight room at that time is a lot smaller than it is now. So it was tight. but we were just like focused, like, I don't know.
Callbacks, teaching and coaching skills or coaching philosophy, I guess, made us that way.
Yeah. Just made us, it wasn't a lot of horsing around. I mean, I remember times we did horse around, we're kids, but for the most part, and I remember him saying, and I don't know if it's legal or not, but hey, you got to get this weight program done or you're not playing.
Absolutely.
You know,
he's a coach.
That's right. And so we did. We had all summer to do it, and we would do that.
And we did that every year.
Yeah, every year
from 7th grade to our senior year in high school.
And I remember none of us, except for a couple of guys I remember that were older than us, were like buff, super, obviously weightlifter guys. That wasn't what it was. And I'm going to tell you right now for the audience that I don't know if we had more than 2 guys that were over 6 foot.
Yeah, probably not.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, your brother and Jim Reeves.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's probably about it.
We didn't have a big class
No.
As far as size goes. So we were really average sized guys. And that's what we're going to get into later is how all the teams kind of underestimated us because of that reason.
Yep, right. Funny story. I don't know if you probably remember this, but we had you and Perry and me were spotting Matt Mills at the bench press, and you and Perry put an ungodly amount of weight on it. We did have a plan. So I was spotting him from the front, and you guys were on the edges there, and we pulled it up on him, and he dropped it to his chest, and he couldn't move it. So I turned around and dropped my pants and sat on his face. I don't know if you remember that or not, but that was pretty funny.
Oh, that's coming back to me, huh? Oh, God, that's coming back.
Like I said, we were kids.
We were kids. Yes, we did. We did dumb stuff, and then there's no doubt about that. But we were focused, and I don't know if it was Callback's bald head and demeanor that got us that way, or what.
Well, I think that probably started, and then when we got into high school and started winning some ball games because of him. We didn't want to let him down. We didn't want to let any of our coaches down.
That is, I think, in my opinion, was one of the most critical things that we had.
Yeah, we didn't want to let each other down or our coaches.
No, and I remember because we had our good friend Mike Shad, his dad, Coach Jim Shad, was our JV coach.
Right.
And he was a great guy, and he's no longer with us, and neither is Coach Callback. They're both gone, but he was a great guy. I remember we would sit there and run, and his response was, if we weren't doing things right in practice, we can always run, gentlemen.
Yeah. And we did.
And we did. And I remember Mr. Shab would sit over there in the shade with a Diet
Coke.
Pepsi.
He'd pull it out of his pocket. I don't know how long it was in his pocket, but he would pull it out of his pocket.
Cold,
well, gentlemen.
We can always run. And he would make us run, and I felt the same way about Mr. Shad or Coach Shad as I did Coach Callback. I didn't want to let him down.
Absolutely. There's a handful of people that are instrumental in my bringing up. My dad, of course, and some uncles, but our Coach Callback and Coach Shad are on that list for me.
It's just one of those things. Just I don't know if it wasn't a pride thing. It was just the fact that it felt like you were letting down a family member, I guess. It just felt that way to me. And I remember talking about funny things is your brother and I are both linemen, if you don't know in the audience. And so we were left guard and right and left tackle.
Right.
And Perry, Paul's brother, decided he was going to run the ball in practice one time, a couple of times. And we were in practice, and so he was running the ball, and then we had decided to dogpile on him. And we dogpiled, and I mean not just a few guys, like, I don't know, maybe the whole team
probably.
And he come out of there screaming and crying. He had broke his ankle. I felt bad for him, but like most kids at that age, we just laughed and didn't think it was really that bad, but it was. And so we felt bad after that. But that's just things you do in practice. I think Keith Martin's got a lot of that brutal punishment.
Oh, absolutely, he did.
Yeah, he did.
I can't remember who was on the receiving end. I don't know if we were in JVs, if we were freshmen, or if we were sophomores. Somebody hit Kurt Young. I think he was quarterback. Late hit or something.
In practice.
And we were in the huddle in practice, and and Brian, he says, we're getting dogpiled. Everybody's going to go at this guy on the snap. It wasn't pretty.
No.
No.
No, that would be hillbilly justice. is what that-
Absolutely.
So we would have, so we go through our freshman year. We ended up not losing a game. There were some key players in our sophomore year that were taken up.
Yes, there was.
Key players. Mike
players.
Shad is one.
Yep.
I think Rick Vincent was the other.
Jim Reeves, I think, went up.
Jim Reeves. So we were now without, several of our boys that we grew up with, especially played with. So we had to really make up to do that again in our sophomore year.
Right.
Yeah.
We picked up a few freshmen, that
Yes.
helped us out quite a bit.
Yes.
So, I mean, James Carr was instrumental.
And I remember, I think Jason Spears was on there, a couple other guys.
Right.
I think was Q on there?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a good, some bump ups to help us from the lower class, but we had to figure out what we were going to do because we really, now that we had not lost a game, we didn't want to lose any.
No, we wanted to keep that rolling.
We wanted to keep that rolling, I mean, and if you've never played a sport, it's almost impossible to talk to anybody that's went into the locker room that's never lost.
It don't happen very often.
It doesn't happen very often. And so we had not lost that year. So now we're going into our sophomore year, and now we are a little stronger, a little bigger than we were in the freshman year. And we do the same thing.
Yeah. Repeat.
We repeated. And meanwhile, the varsity, when we repeated that year, they went to playoffs.
Right.
And didn't.
No, we lost again. I went up to the playoff game that week, and we played up in Mount Shasta in this tremendous rainstorm. And you go up in the mountains back then. You went up in the mountains. It's still like that, but the referees are really, really hometown referees.
Oh yeah,
and we had some bad calls that game.
Yeah, that's what I remember hearing. In fact, I didn't go to that game because my dad got drawn for Nevada, so I said after we went and played our last game, we hit the road. And I didn't think I would see much playing time anyway because that team had a lot of good players on it.
They did. That was a
anyway.
great team.
So that sophomore year comes and goes, we don't lose a game. And so now we switched coaches to callback because now we're on the varsity. And we go into that season, it seemed to me, with even more pressure than the last two seasons.
We did. I think there was a little bit of pressure there.
Yeah.
And I think coaches put some pressure on us too, but they wanted us to succeed.
Yeah, and now we had callback the head, we had DeArmond on defense, and we had Art Brown on the O-line,
right.
or in D-line, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Since I was a lineman and Paul was a back, I guess we'll get two perspectives of the coaching that we got, but I will tell you from the lineman standpoint, I know if your brother was here, he'd agree, we pushed the sled more than I've ever seen being pushed. And not saying that we didn't do it in the JV because we did, but when we got to the varsity level, and if you don't know who Coach Brown is and Coach DeArmond is, they're not light guys, and they would stand on that sled and make us push that thing hundreds of yards almost daily.
Yeah. And DeArmond would pump your feet.
Pump your feet. And he'd even have a little whip.
Oh, he'd go find a stick in the calves. Oh, yeah.
Yes. That sled, I remember always looking over at you backs going, oh, that's bull, man.
Oh, we worked just as hard.
That's bull, man, those guys. And so we would push that sled, and it was just part of our routine.
Every practice.
Almost every practice. Yep. Except for Thursdays, I guess we got away with it because it was half pads.
Right.
But we would push that thing, and we started to, I felt like we started to gel a little bit. We started to figure out what it took to get to where we needed to go. We knew we had Paul's brother Brian for another year, which was going to be good, and we knew we had a good line. We had a quarterback. I had high hopes for that year, but I didn't know how high of hopes we could achieve.
Well, you knew, when you go from 8th grade to a freshman, the game gets a little faster.
Oh, yeah.
And you really don't know what to expect. And then you jump from that sophomore year to that junior year, and it's even faster.
Yes. Even faster.
The competition's even, you got playoffs involved now, so the competition's even more.
And when we played back then, our biggest rival was East Nick, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. That was the biggest. I mean, Durham was a pretty good rival.
That's
too.
true. Durham was big. I would say it might be a toss-up between East Nick and Durham, but they were humongous, rivals to us.
Yep.
And I believe the year before we got there in our junior year, we got beat by them.
The varsity got beat, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, they got beat 35-14, I think it was. And, we went there during basketball season and played them during basketball, and they had big posters up on the wall, 35-14.
Oh, yeah. So, and they played us at home that season. And so now the next season, we're juniors, we're going there.
Yep.
We're going there. And East Nick is just south of Sacramento, not too far. In fact, I think they get some players from that Rio Vista area.
Just north of Sacramento.
Yeah. Or sorry, north. North. Not south, north. And so they get some players from those outlying Sac areas. And so they're always really tough. And they had this one guy that I remember, his name was Leonard.
Yep, lightning speed.
Lightning speed Leonard, I think is what Callback called
he won the stake track meet in high hurdles or something. He was very fast.
Fast guy, Somehow, for that game, I don't know how he did it, but he got a jersey.
Oh, Callback. Yeah, I don't know. He must have had one made or something.
He had a jersey made that said, it was an East Nick jersey. It had Leonard on the back.
Had his number on it.
Had his number on it and everything, right? And we had been grilled all week. Now, this guy is who we have to key on.
Yeah, we're going to contain this guy.
We got to stop this guy, right? We can't let him get out. We can't let him do that. So we would do that. We would all week. And then on Thursday, we're kind of all, I think we're in tight squad. I think Diarman or maybe Art called it. And then all of a sudden, if I remember right, from the park, now the park is about 200, 300 yards from the field. It's a little park. It's called Cork Oak Park. It's got a bunch of little cork trees that they planted years ago, I guess. I don't know why, because they're messing in their junk. But anyway, all of a sudden, Callback starts screaming from way over there. Leonard's in the park.
He's here. He's here.
Leonard's in the park. And Diarman and Art are like, go get him, So we take off, and we run over to the park, and we form a circle around
this dummy he made.
A dummy he made hanging from a tree. And Callback proceeds to say, I think something like, we got you surrounded, and then he proceeds to light him on fire. And he got us so pumped up. We have video, actually, of this happening. Not sure it would be legal today, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I think it would have a problem today.
But the fact that he got us there and knew that the next day we were going to be facing him, I remember that to this day, that it is sunk into my brain. Like, obviously none of us felt ill will towards him. It was just the fact that we needed.
Sure, we did. We wanted to hurt him.
we wanted to contain him, and shut him down, especially on his home field.
Right.
And because that's what we were going, and we knew it, and we're like, okay, we got to do this. So we did. So that went on, and when we played, Corey Willenberg always had team dinners for us. Always team dinners, and he would have great food. And we had a little cafeteria back then, so he could make everything, and they would even have fresh cookies, everything. And we'd have a full team dinner the night before, I guess it was.
The night before, yeah.
The night before, yeah. So Thursday night after this incident, we had a dinner. And we would even, we would talk amongst ourselves and kind of, I guess, just gel more.
Yeah, just take some time off the field.
Yeah.
I don't think we stopped talking about the game at all.
Yeah.
But we just, took some time off the field.
And I've been a coach, you have too, since those days. And I don't know if you've taken many bus rides with the kids, but I have when I was coaching with Mike on the JV level. And I know it's JV, but I can't say that I remember this 100% when we were JVs. But when I go on that bus, I don't hear a lot of silence on the way to the game. And I remember when we went, it seemed like it was quiet all the way.
Yeah, I think it was business.
It was.
Yep.
To me, it was. I was going over my head, the plays. What do we do in this situation? Who do I block in this situation? If they come out in a 5-3 or 6-2, what am I doing? What's Perry doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm not saying that they don't do that now. I just don't. It just seems a lot louder to me than it was when we would go there. Now, when we came back, that was a different story.
Oh yeah,
You know, our work's done,
and we won.
and we and we won. And so that was just that was just an observation that I had, and I didn't know if you had noticed.
I
that.
didn't really pay attention to that. You know, even when I was coaching, I was still trying to get ready for the game.
You're still preparing
still
yourself,
preparing,
yeah.
right.
And I just noticed, and I know the cheerleaders do a lot of talking, and then they usually would sit up front, and the kids in the back, the players. But I don't know. Me and Mike would go over the game plan, and it would just seem like there'd be a lot of talking.
Yeah, and I think that's when Brian and I rode the bus together, if we coached together, that's what we would do too.
We go to East Nicholas, and we got to contain Leonard, and we ended up containing Leonard.
We contained him very well.
Yeah, real well.
Really well. I remember the first drive of that trail. Well, actually, in warm-ups, I remember we're out on a field and we're warming up, and here comes this East Nicholas team, and they're circling us like a bunch of Indians and hooping and hollering, and we're starting to talk back, and callback comes over and kind of calms us down a little bit.
Yeah.
Callback's just wait for the field, boys.
Yeah.
Wait for the field.
That's right. And that's right. They were marching around us, Paul,
They were
saying,
cocky.
"We are Big Red. We are
that might
Big
have been
Red."
that might have been what it was.
Yeah, and it's like, oh boy. And when we were kids, Big Red was a great gum.
Yeah,
it was really popular. Big Red. Remember, our grandma used to have that in her purse all the time, Chubby. Man, all the time. Big Red, Big Red. But yeah, we are Big Red, right? Doing this whole thing. I even think they had a flag too, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think they did too.
So we go through the game. Like Callback told us, hey, let's do our talking on the field.
Hey, we got the kickoff. Callback wanted the ball. This game, he wanted the ball.
He won.
We get into our first drive, and it was third or fourth play of the game, and Callback put in this special play that week, I believe it was. It was that power right quarterback keeper or whatever it was, where Kurt faked the.
That's right.
Faked the power right, and then put the ball on his hip and ran around the end. Well, executed perfectly. The first time we ran that.
The fake was great.
The ball was on his hip. He's 20 yards down the field, and referees are blowing it dead.
I remember that.
Because they thought a running back had
the running back had the ball. And I remember Kurt holding the ball up, and they're like, oh, boy.
So then we had to come back and replay that play. But they didn't do a very good job of stopping us. I think the final score was 47-7.
Oh, I know the final score was 47-7. In fact, when I was doing Easter eggs a few years back, I wrote on there, I put an Easter egg half in green and half in red, and I wrote 47-7, and I sent it to Mike Shad, and he said that was the funniest freaking thing. For us to remember that, that's as ingrained in my head. I got to be totally honest with you, as we get down the road in our discussion, that's ingrained in my head more than the championship game.
Oh, absolutely.
More than the score of the champ. I know who won, obviously, but I remember that for some reason that just burned in me. So
yeah, that's a game I'll never forget. Right
no. And I remember at the end of the game, we were getting together on the sidelines, starting to say Leonard, and then Callback came over and said, "No, that's enough of that."
He had enough beating tonight. He don't need any more.
So we did exactly what Coach wanted us to do, and I remember this. So we would come to practice like on a Monday, especially after a big game like that. And I think Callback had a really good way of keeping our, what do you call it, Paul? Help me out here. Keeping our heads from
getting too big,
about ready to pop.
Well, he did a good job that year. I mean, we got some big heads our senior year.
Oh yeah,
and we had some close games because of it.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, he did a good job of that.
Yeah, he would be. I remember once or twice where he would just walk off practice.
Yeah, we finished a couple of practice by ourselves.
Yeah, when that happened, I think it was one of the best learning experiences.
Well, I think it was planned.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, it was planned. And I was thinking, he's going to see how we react.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the whole goal of it, right? And I think, okay, he's gone, so now we don't have anybody to tell us to be out here, but we all chose to be out there.
Yeah, we wanted to finish practice.
Yeah, and we would do it, and I think that's exactly what his plan was, is these guys, let's see what they do. Let's see if they just go off and party and mess off, or let's see if they really, care. And I think that was what he did. And a lot of times it worked good. And I remember me and Mike Shad did that once or twice in our JV tenure that we had, where we would just say, well, you guys don't want to listen. We're just going to take off and see what happened.
They went and partied?
They went and partied. No, I think they did finish. I think they felt bad. I think when a kid who cares about their coach, cares about the team, when they know that they've reached that point, what I've seen is they've done the right thing. And that's what you want. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you know that this is just a flash in the pan compared to what your life's going to be like. And you got to be able to take criticism. You got to be able to work out in the real world.
Right.
And I think they set us up really good for that. So we go through that game, and now we're approaching again another undefeated season, and we have, and I don't know if you want to talk about any other games, but the last game of the season, actually of the whole season, the championship game.
Championship game?
Yeah. Unless you have another game you want to bring up.
I thought the first playoff game we played Trinity at home. I thought that was a challenge for us.
That was.
Of course, we won, but I thought that game was a challenge. That was a fun game.
Yeah, that was not I don't remember the score, but it wasn't an easy rollover game.
No,
that's
it wasn't,
for sure.
not at all.
So we played Trinity at home, and now we have one more game to finish the season. Unfortunately, like it is now, where you can keep going, which I wish we could have back then.
Right? Yeah. There was no state back then.
There was no state tournament.
There were two champions back then. There was a large school champion and a small school champion. Now there's 7 divisions.
Gotcha.
In the North Cal and 7 in the South Cal, and then they come together and play bowl games.
They come together and play. That's right. So you can play all the way into December.
Sure.
If you're doing really well. So we went ahead and go to our championship game, and now we have a rematch with the team that we lost to last year.
Yep.
But this time, they have a guy on that team that, well, let's just put it this way. He's the fastest white guy I've ever seen.
Oh, he's really fast.
I mean,
yeah, he was fast.
I thought Leonard was fast until I seen this guy, and I didn't know anything about this guy. I just knew that when we went into that game, callback was telling us we have 2 guys that we have to do something with. One is their linebacker, but he was right over me, and the other was Seahorn. Now, their quarterback was good too,
right?
But Seahorn was the speed of the team.
Yes, he was.
And so callback said, this linebacker is a Pac-10 recruit, so this guy is no joke. We have to figure out a way. And they would run that 5-3, so nobody was over me as the left guard. And Perry had a guy over him, but I didn't. So I could go out and hit this. I think his name was Willis or something, but I hit him every play. And I remember when we were playing in that game, several times I'd go out and I'd chop his rear. I'd chop him at the knees every play, right? And he wasn't used to the speed that we had on our line, because our line was not big, as you know.
Right, they were quick.
We were just quick and fat. We could get to a spot quick, but we may not be fast running, but we were quick, like you said.
Right.
So I'd chop him at the knees, and I remember a couple of times the ref come up to me and said, "Hey, 64, another yard, I'm going to give you a flag," because he was at that 5-yard mark.
Right.
And if he was any farther back, then I could get a flag. So, I mean, I had his shins bloody. I just kept nailing him and taking him right down on the ground. And one time, Paul, he was at 7 yards.
You got flagged.
I got flagged for it. But that was the only thing I could do, really, I thought, to take care of the problem, is just to get him on the ground. Because once he's on the ground, we got Brian behind us. So you stand up, you're too late.
You're done. Yeah.
Just got to get just a little bit of a.
Yeah, Brian's at 5-yard mark right now.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And if I didn't get out to him, I'd get Brian's face mask in my back.
Yeah. That'll make you get out to him.
I was like,
cleats up your back, face mask.
So and I remember one of the early plays in the game. We would boom, me and Perry opened it up. Brian takes off. And Mike on the other side were just as good. But I remember Brian taking off, and I'm laying on the ground, and I'm watching. And I'm thinking, and usually when we would play, if I could get Brian past the linebackers, it was over.
Right.
I mean, it was over. I mean, if I can get him past the linebackers, we got it. And he gets past the linebackers, and I'm already putting my hands up in the air, as I'm laying on the ground. And all of a sudden, I see this streak come out seemed like nowhere out of the corner of my eye and caught him. And I go, oh, Callback's not joking. He's fast.
Seahorn was fast.
He's fast, and
I think he had an angle at Brian on that.
he
one,
did.
Too.
He was just smart football
He was.
player. So we played that game back and forth. Mount Shasta College we played it at.
Shasta College, yes.
Right, Shasta College, muddy.
Oh, it was muddy, yeah.
It was and I remember the field. It was kind of eerie. Had a little bit of fog hanging down, and when we traveled, at least, and I still think it happens today. When Biggs travels, a lot of times we have more fans in the stands than they do.
Almost every game.
Almost
even
every
today,
game.
Biggs has always had a real good fan base.
Crazy good.
Yep.
So we played that game, and we score a touchdown on this one play, and our kicker Mike Miller, Kurt Young holds the ball, bad snap. So Kurt picks the ball up, and in that case, it's just a run for the end zone, right? You don't know. That's all you can do. So he's running to the end zone. And somehow, I don't know if he pitched it to Mike or if he just got almost tackled and he decided to throw it to Mike. But either way, the ball leaves Kurt's hands, rolls around into the end zone, and we jump on it for 2 points. Or he fumbled it right into Mike's arms as he's going down.
Right. That's probably what
I
happened.
think that's what happened. So we ended up getting
and Mike being a lineman held on.
That's right.
He got some
dear
glory.
life.
He got some glory on it.
And Mike Miller was an outstanding field goal kicker.
He was. He held the field goal record at Biggs for
43, I believe.
Yeah, it was 43, and he held it for years.
Oh, for years. And he was automatic. Like, when we would score a touchdown, I had not even a doubt in my mind we'd have 7 points.
He got pretty good at putting that shoe on.
He did. He had a big old flat nose shoe.
It's like kicking with a 2x6.
But he was just on. And I remember his dad and him at the school on weekends all the time.
All the time. They spent so much time up there.
All the time. Kicking and kicking and kicking. But Mike was really good. He had the timing down. He had the swinging of the arms just right. He would kick that ball. And I mean, it felt automatic to me. Like, if we miss it, that's an odd.
It was very rare.
Very rare.
Yeah, Mike did a good job.
So we had that. So we had a great kicker. We had a great running back. We had a good line. We had other backs and receivers. I mean, we had a complete team.
Yes.
I mean, literally, I don't know if we really had a weakness.
I'm sure we had something.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of our games are blowouts too, so maybe we didn't have too much of a weakness.
Yeah, and I remember on the defensive side of the ball, playing on the line again, I remember that when it felt to me like, I don't know if it felt to you, but if I miss this tackle, somebody else will get him. Because we have such a good unit, we're not going to let this happen.
We gang tackled.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We it was just always like it was a punishing defense. It wasn't one guy typically. Most of the time it was multiple guys.
Yep.
And it was just like we kind of had all of us seemed like we had all of our backs. Like we weren't going to give up until the whistle was dead. And I think that's what Callback ingrained in us.
Oh, yeah, it was taught.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You play to the whistle's end and don't give up. And, effort that I think that was ingrained in us at early age that we just didn't quit.
Right.
So we played that game. We ended up winning that game. And I do, and Paul does too, I'm sure, because we have a video that we made years ago for our, was that 20 year reunion. And it has Jason Sehorn talking to the news after the game. And I think the few first words out of his mouth were, "They're lying."
Yeah.
Their line was just quicker than we anticipated. Yeah. Like we couldn't do what we wanted to do. And when you get that kind of a comment, of course, that makes your head swell even bigger.
A little bit.
But it was to the point, like I said before, when you looked at us as a team, you didn't see I don't know, what do you call that word when you look at somebody and you go, man, that guy's really big, or that. I mean, it wasn't like that.
No, not our teams were never like that.
No, I think it was a real shock to most of them. And even the coach got on and said it on the news. Their line.
Right. Their
line was just, and I think that it was just harassment all night long. Either it was on defense or offense. They just couldn't get it. They couldn't. But it was a back and forth game.
It was a back and forth game.
And I remember, and this was a special one, I think, for us. One callback had never won that.
Biggs High School never won it.
Biggs High School had never won that.
Right.
And then that year, kind of jumped ahead a bit, but that year, his son got in a major accident.
Right.
And his son was one of our major coaches on the line because when he got into his accident, in fact, he was going to probably go to the pros as a long snapper.
Right.
He was down
in
San Diego State.
Right.
He was playing down there, and then he got into a car wreck and got paralyzed from basically the waist down.
Yep.
And that was a devastation to callback because he had, worked with Bart all these time, and Bart had done so well. And I remember when Bart came up before the accident, he brought a punter friend with him.
Right. I remember that.
Holy mackerel.
Kick the ball a mile.
I couldn't. As a kid that we're used to punts like we are in high school, when you see a guy punt the ball that knows how to do it, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. It was beyond belief. And I remember Bart being in the gym and standing at one end of the gym and throwing the ball through his legs as a long snapper position and hitting the wall on the other side.
He was a big boy.
Just a massive beast guy. And so that happened to him, and it was really hard for callback because that was his only son. And that was the only shot that he had for him going to the NFL. I mean, Kerry's done really well, but it's the fact that would be a blow to anybody. But he comes, and now he's helping us on the line in his wheelchair, and he's doing all these things. And that was really a, push for us to do better.
A different perspective. He played the college ball.
Yeah.
So did Coach Callback, but Bart, he, came right out of college there. Unfortunate accident, but he brought different perspectives.
He did.
Different coaching techniques
that
they were using back then.
You said callback played. I think he was a back, though, in high school or in college or something like that.
Yeah, quarterback, I think. Maybe.
Exactly. And then so Bart brings the line perspective. Right. So we had, besides Art and DeArmond, we had a good coaching staff.
Oh, absolutely.
Really good. I remember Art parking his RV
in the end zone.
In the end zone, he had a motorhome that he'd park down there. Then he'd put up the antenna so that he could communicate in these giant walkie-talkies with an antenna that's at least 8 feet.
Yep.
And you could communicate with another guy in the crow's nest. It was so funny to look at now, but he could film the games from his motorhome, and he could talk with that little walkie-talkie. But that was just it's humorous to look back at that technology back then. But we are already filming our games from the end zone, which was not a normal practice.
Not back then, it wasn't.
No.
Callback wanted a couple of different angles.
Yeah.
How's the line opening up holes? Or
exactly.
Back hitting holes.
I remember a couple of times, we would come to the sideline and we'd say, Art would say, "What's going on? Why is this not working?" Well, Adam's not hitting the hole. We're opening up the hole. It's just not there. And he grabbed Adam by the face mask. I'm Brown did it. Pulled him in. He goes, "Adam, hit the hole." And it's okay. Says that if you don't know, when you're playing, when you open up a hole, it's like a wave, right? It opens and then it
closes.
Close,
yeah.
It doesn't stay open for long, and especially if you're playing a good team. So that was hilarious when I saw that happen. Either that or we just mostly blame it on Matt or something. I don't know.
There you go. Matt was a good one.
So we had that game. We ended up winning the championship. Like I said, Bart's in a wheelchair. Callback, I remember him specifically, and got him on video walking down to the scoreboard and looking up at it. And I'm pretty sure he had tears in his eyes.
Oh, no doubt.
It was really an emotional game. We ended up winning that game, and now we come to our senior year.
We were expected to win.
Expected.
I think the whole north section says these guys aren't going to lose a game.
Yeah, and we even got a black jacket for our last season.
We did.
And it's State B champions on it, because like Paul was saying earlier, there's only 2 champions in the state at that time, small and large. So we were the small school champions of the state. And so we go into our senior year, and now we don't have Brian. So now we're kind of back to what we kind of grew up with, I felt, where we had a bunch of us now that were just all about the same.
We were. We never really had, like I said, we've said this a number of times.
Except for Brian and them that were, way
that graduated. I mean, Brian, Brian and Kurt and those guys, they were a step ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian was a different animal. I mean, he was a beast on the football field.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was, 5'9", 5'10", only weighed about 140 pounds or something like that, but he hit like a guy that was 220
Exactly.
pounds.
I remember Martin's, getting back to Keith, when we were juniors and we go in practice, Martin's would always be the back of the other team that we were playing. So
Somebody's got to do it.
So we would, callback would make the offense of the team we were playing, and then we'd have our defense, and okay, they're going to be running this, this, and this, and I remember, and in fact, it was kind of comical, somewhat. But Martin's just had a recent, he said X-ray of his chest, and he found a broken rib.
It's been broke since 1989 or 1988.
He thinks it was one of those practices that we had. Because I tell you what, Martin's could take it though, man. I mean, he could take a freaking hit. I mean, he and as much as we should have held up because he was our team mate, even though he was playing the opposite team, he could take some serious punishment. So I got to hand it to him.
I imagine he probably had a couple concussions back then.
I bet he did. Because Paul was right. Brian hit like a Mack truck. I mean, I remember several times, and like talking about our defense, how we would gang tackle. I remember early on that I found that I needed to, once I got a hold of the guy, I needed to drop my hands.
Or you're going to get hit. Yep.
I needed to drop my hands around the guy's waist or legs and hold on instead of holding up high.
Brian was always coming in from 30 yards away.
Somewhere.
Traveling at Mach 1 speed.
Somebody's coming, and it's probably him, and he's going to just barrel into us, and that's fine. But I remember, okay, I need to grab and drop.
Yeah. Brian used to love that. I mean, it was fun to watch, too, especially on film day.
It was fun to watch.
This guy stood up, and then all of a sudden, here comes a flash, and he's on the ground.
Boom. And we would have that award called Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch.
That was something we got a little sticker on the back of our helmet for. So we played our senior year. We're going there now. Now we have James Carr as our quarterback, which is a lefty, and he can throw the ball a mile as well.
He throws right-handed.
He does throw right-handed?
Yeah, he throws right-handed.
Well, maybe I'm wrong then.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's right-handed, but he's
strong arm. Very strong arm.
Very strong, can throw a long way. And we have him now as our quarterback, which now we got he's a little faster than Kurt. He can run.
Yeah.
And so Kurt's more of a pocket guy and stuff like that. So we got a little adjustment there for us, but we go through that season. And for some reason, Mount Shasta doesn't make it there, and I'm pretty sure because Seahorn graduated.
They made it to the playoffs. Durham just beat them.
Durham
upset them.
Durham upset them because we played Durham at their place, and it was kind of a blowout.
Yeah, we smoked them.
I remember on the opening kickoff, somebody hit me right in the freaking gut with their helmet, and I rolled off the field going. I remember Art coming over to me and goes, "Hey, you all right? Just take a breath." I can't take a breath. That's the problem, And finally he goes, "Watch out, they're going to be, because I think they were just, it didn't matter at that point. They were going and we were going, so it was just kind of a game. But so we ended up, I don't know who we played in the first round on that season.
I don't remember either.
I don't
remember. Maybe
remember.
Edna. Edna may have come to town.
I think it was a mountain team that you say that.
Yeah.
So we play Etna, and now we have to go over to Harrison Stadium in Orville. And I know you probably know, and some of you may not, but Harrison Stadium now is super nice.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Before, it was a cow pasture.
Yeah.
I remember walking out on the dirt, and it was just barely any grass blades, just dirt.
That was the end of the season.
Yes.
So the field was tore up. Actually, I think that field was probably tore up the year before that too,
yeah.
But it really wasn't taken care of very well.
And I remember on that game, and I'm pretty sure on the other game, but I just don't remember. We had our band there for that game.
Yes, our bands were at all of our home games.
Oh my gosh, our bands, Mr. McGinnis, Schofield. It was just awesome to have your own band. I get jealous every time I go to a high school that has a band.
It has a band. Me too.
I really enjoy that I just enjoy it because I was a band member, but not that. I just like music, and I think it's cool that the kids can do stuff like
Right.
that. But we went to Harrison Stadium, but before we went to Harrison Stadium, Channel 12 came to our campus.
They did. They came down to interview us about the big game.
They did. And I mistakenly said something to the fact that if we lose this game, I'm going to have to move.
Well, I think a lot of comments from Perry and Jim and Mike and Rick Vincent stemmed from the episode from the night before, because Channel 12 went to Durham first.
Okay.
And Durham was telling them that they could play with us. So there was a lot of comical
I remember
one-liners there from these
Vincent
guys.
saying, I think they got a weak team.
Yeah, I remember that.
Man.
But, we had big heads.
We did.
We did.
Because, I mean, who wouldn't? We had never stepped into the locker room and hung our head.
Right.
Ever. I mean, we didn't. There was a couple of guys in our class that had moved up that did lose that first year that they went
up. A couple
up.
games that first year, yeah.
But we have never. Paul and I have never. And so it was kind of comical. We had already played Durham, which I think was a bad thing because we already know how these guys are.
Right.
And that can work for or against you. And I think Callback really knew that, and he really tried to keep us focused.
That had to be hard for him.
Oh, my gosh, that had to be horrible.
He knew Durham was terrible, though.
He
did. He knew.
He did. So we go to Orville, we play, and it is exactly as Paul and I anticipated it being. It was a complete blowout where we won our second state championship. I remember being in the locker room, and Ed Miller said this to me the other day, and he said, I remember you going in there way after everybody had been out of there, and you and Mike are sitting in there still fully suited up. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, man, this is the last time I'll ever have these on.
Yeah.
And
that was an emotional game.
That was.
Really emotional.
I remember letting us run the ball. Letting their line run the ball.
Yeah, I remember that. Me and Ryan Curtis was calling the offenses.
Yeah, that's right. In the game, they let me and Perry and Mike Shad, a couple other guys who had never ran the ball the whole time because we were on the line, get a taste of it, And it was a good experience, except the guys that replaced us didn't block, so that didn't help. That didn't help at all. But we had it was sitting in that locker room. I just knew it. I just knew because, I loved football, but I wasn't going to go on and play after.
Right.
It just wasn't in my cards to do it. And so the emotions were very high for me. I didn't want to take my stuff off. And it was just, that's the way I felt at the time. But we had that game, ended up winning it again, got another jacket, got another one, But I just don't know if could be any better scenario to it. In fact, I have 3 of those yellow notepads. I started learning how to write screenplays, and I'm starting to write our screenplay for our life experience.
Awesome.
Because I don't think what I've seen come out of Hollywood, except for repeats, I don't know who wouldn't want to watch that.
Absolutely.
We have Callback's accident, we have our triumph all the way through,
right? And
then all of the other shenanigans that were pulled in between that I've got in there.
There's quite a few in there.
I mean, the day I got stuck on the lawn, Callback was not real happy about it, and he told me, Smith, you got to fix those ruts, you son of a...
Going back to Richville.
So, no, it wasn't me, it was Keith. So we had, to me, it was beyond belief. A lot of people, and you probably run into people too, that say, I'd hate to go back to high school. I'd go back tomorrow.
Oh, you and me both.
I'd go back tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And I think, and me and Brennan were talking about this the other day because he's coming out. My oldest son's coming out, and he's going to go to work here in Butte County. And he was talking to me about, what would be a good place to live, And I said, well, son, I said, you have to think about this. There are, like Roseville. He's talking about maybe Roseville, someplace nice. And I said, those are all great. And I said, but I want you to remember this. I said, you go to a place like that, and there's nothing against it. I said, but your son, your daughter goes on to a team, and now there's 50 of them wanting to play basketball.
Right. Yeah, and you lose that small town.
And I said, so, unless your son or daughter is an absolute unbelievable athlete, you have to think about those things. And not that there's anything wrong with bigger schools, but it's a truth that when you were raised where we were raised, you not only were on the team, you got to play.
Absolutely.
And a lot of kids just are on the team.
Right.
Just have a jersey. And I think that's unfortunate. I mean, I know when I coached and we were either blowing out people or getting blown out, I would always try to get the kids
Everybody
that didn't play because, they work just as hard as the starters to get there, and we're not doing well or we are doing well. So, and I don't think a lot of that goes on at the bigger schools just because it's not I think, for one, there's too many to look at to try to get in the game. So I just, that was just something. And he goes, I never really thought about that before. And I said, well, as you start to be a parent, you will, and it's unfortunate, you don't come popping out of the womb and it doesn't say star athlete on you.
Right.
You have no idea until that person gets older, and then you can kind of make decisions on, should I stay at this little school or should I go somewhere else? I said, and he knows, I said, the biggest advantage now that we have in this day and age versus what me and you had is if you are a star athlete in Biggs, California, you can be seen anywhere in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Where before you had to go to a bigger school just to get somebody to look at you.
Right.
And that's not the case anymore. So there's really no reason to go there unless you just want more competition, I guess. Do you have anything else to add, Paul, about that, about all our experience in high school?
I don't think so, Trav.
Man,
a good recap of football right there.
Oh man, I tell you, to look back and think about it. Yeah, it's funny because I've told my sons several times, when they would lose a game, I'm like, can you tell me what that's
What's
like?
it feel like?
What are you feeling right now? I've never felt that.
I felt it as a coach.
I remember when me and Perry were chaperoning the 8th graders at Monterey. We stayed in a YMCA, and it was the year that we had our reunion, and I had that video already. And I said, boys, because me and Perry had the boys, and the girls were on another side of the YMCA, and that's where we spent the night on the floor. And me and Perry played that video for them. And they're like, oh, boy. And I was like, if you guys can do this, and we were already coaching them up at that point, this is what you got to do to get to this level. But, it was something that, like I've said, many people are shocked. You go back to high school? Oh, my gosh. Are you kidding me? I mean, there's just, I don't think of anything really bad that ever happened in high school.
No, I don't think so.
I know. It was just super fun. But anyway, I appreciate you, Paul, coming by, talking about old times, and I hope you enjoyed this show. I try to put one out a week, and I did have a few weeks off of there where I went deer hunting with my dad, and now I'm kind of back and trying to get this YouTube thing. This time we did tape on each computer, Paul and I, so I'm going to try to piece all these pieces together and see if we can get a good YouTube and with that. And remember, I do have a YouTube channel. It's Front Row Chaos. You can go there and you can watch most of my podcasts, and some we will film, and some I just have random videos on there. Like I made one. I took Tanner out to the rice harvest the other day and made a little video about that. It's like 10 minutes. It was really cool. I took the drone with me and did a little bit of stuff with that. But just to have that with all these other pieces on that YouTube channel, if you can go there and hit subscribe, and if you could like it, it really helps me out with my stats. On the podcast side of things, if you could download the episode, and then once you listen to it, if you want to get rid of it, that's fine. But remember, it's only an audio file, so it takes like not even it's just super small. It doesn't take up any space. But if you don't download it and just listen to it, then there's no way that they see that anybody listened to it. it's kind of goofy. They don't give you credit for listens, just downloads. So that's how that works. And I do have their website. And believe it or not, I do have merchandise coming. I have a lady in Orville who is making a storefront for me that's going to be on my website. So you can click on it, and then you can order a shirt or a hat that says Front Row Chaos on it, change the colors. And then she gets the order, makes it, and sends it to you. So I don't have to hold a bunch of shirts and hats, and it works out great. I get like $5 every shirt or something that, you know. So if you could support the show that way, that would be great. I'm going to have Paul back more because, like I said, he's one of my best, if not my best hosts that I've had. So I just appreciate you coming by, Paul, and we will hit it again.
I can't wait, Trav. Thanks a lot.
In the future.
And thanks to your audience for listening.
All right, man. You guys have a great and blessed day.